This is episode 20 of the Gambling Still Sucks podcast. In this episode, I share my reaction to the Supreme Court ruling that's going to expand sports betting here in the United States. Hey there, and welcome to the Gambling Still Sucks podcast. My name is Jamie. I am a compulsive gambler, and I'm also the host of this show. Now, I know I promised more guests, and we're going to kick those off here next week with some new guest episodes. But this week, I wanted to kind of insert this one because it's newsworthy. This past week, the Supreme Court here in the United States decided on a decision that's kind of been brewing for a while. And it was one of the states has sued to say that a law that kept Nevada as the only state that was allowed to offer sports betting as unconstitutional. And as many people expected, the Supreme Court's ruling was that, yes, this is unconstitutional. And while they didn't legalize sports betting, I think that's probably a misconception of most people. What they said is that it's not their choice or the federal government's choice to decide what states do. And I think they said if Congress wants to make laws and regulations, which I'm sure they will, they can do so. But basically, they left it up to the states to decide, okay, is this something that we want to offer to the citizens of our state? So while they opened the door for expanded access, and this is probably the single ruling that will increase sports betting and betting as a whole here in the United States more than any other in the past, they didn't legalize it. They just allowed states to make it legal. And this is something the states have been very proactive on. A lot of the states have already put rules on the book so that when this happened, as they expected it to happen, they would be ready and they would be able to start to open up sports books. And obviously they want to charge because they want to get the tax revenue out of it. And that's really, I think, what most of the states look at this as, is similar to alcohol, similar to tobacco. This is a way to tax a product and create revenue because the states are hurting. They don't have enough tax revenue. Now, with this ruling, it's been a hot button topic pretty much on all the news here in the United States, but especially, obviously, in the sports world. And me being a sports guy, I've listened to a lot of the different entities from ESPN to CBS, all the sports talk shows. And there's a lot of interesting takes out there. And I'll just leave it as interesting takes. I don't want to call it uneducated, but probably a lot of it is maybe a little bit uneducated on the subject. And so I wanted to use this episode just kind of share my reaction to this ruling and what I foresee happening here in the future. So first of all, I want to start off with the fact that this has become very conflicting for me because, as I mentioned in a previous episode, I do not like to be a hypocrite. And as somebody that will go to a bar and have a drink casually, socially with friends, I understand that there are people that can't do that. There are people just like me that alcohol is their thing and they have an addiction to it and it's something they have to completely abstain from. So I would completely understand where any ruling that's going to expand access to alcohol or increase alcohol content, that person's going to be very against that ruling because they know how damaging it's been in their lives and the lives of the people that they've gotten to know in their recovery. And so that's part of it. And also, I don't know. I agree with the Supreme Court that it's not necessarily the federal government's job to regulate or at least have one place be the only place that can do it. That's not really kind of what our country has been founded on. And you'll hear a lot of people talk about this is kind of giving back people's freedoms. It's not telling them what they can and can't do. And I can't argue that fact. I think that is one of the great things about living here in the United States is that we do have extreme freedoms. And some of those freedoms obviously come with a cost. And I'll get into that later because that is obviously, I think there's a huge cost with expanding gambling. But I can't argue the fact that this is an expansion of freedoms or kind of a return of the freedoms that some people believe that they should have in all areas of their life. So yeah, I'm a bit conflicted. Like I said, I don't want to become a hypocrite. I don't necessarily disagree that it is a expansion of freedoms. All those things can be good. And my goal all along has just been to increase the awareness of problem gambling, of compulsive gambling. And so that's kind of the approach that I'm taking with it, is that I can't say that I'm against this wholeheartedly, other than I'm against anything that's going to lead to increased problem gambling and increased compulsive gamblers. And so that brings me to some of the hot takes that I've heard on the radio, which are quite comical. Probably the most common one, and this is the question that you hear, and it's kind of the lead or the exit into commercial breaks for a lot of the radio shows is, will you gamble more now that it's legal? Will people start to gamble more on sports and bet more on games they attend because it's legal in their state? And I think that's such a comical question just because the answer is, of course they will. And my common response is, well, at the holidays, do you eat more sweets? And I know I am a person, I love sweets. No matter what time of year it is, I'm going to eat sweets if they're available. And so I look at sports betting, and it's the same way, and gambling as a whole. Availability will absolutely increase the number of people doing it. That shouldn't even be a question. I mean, it's like I say, it's, do you eat more cookies if they're sitting on the table at work in the break room? Yes, you eat more cookies. If every day there were cookies sitting on the break room table, you would eat more cookies throughout the year than you would if there weren't any cookies sitting there on the break room table. Now, I know then the common thing is, well, people that want to gamble, they're going to find a way no matter what. And again, I completely agree with this. I was one of those people that did find a way anyway. I would drive out of my way. I had to drive to Cleveland back then. I'd play online, all those different types of things. I was going to find a way to play poker. Now, I will have to say, when they cracked down on some of the online gambling and shut down the, I think it was the Port Act, which all of a sudden wiped out all of the poker sites, I didn't play online very much. Amazing how that happened. So that law that struck down the availability, the easy access that I had from my home, it limited the amount of gambling I had. Did it eliminate the total amount I bet? Probably not, because I would just go and have bigger sessions. It was one of those things that the restriction then led to, okay, I'm going to go and play on the weekend, and I had to find live places. But it did. I had to hide it. And that's one of the things with gambling in the past is you really had to hide it. And people will continue. That, I guess, won't change at all. People are going to continue to hide it because they don't want to hide the losses. But what I'm saying is, when you don't have easy access to it, you have to seek out times and places. It does limit it. And anytime you limit something that could potentially be bad for you, you're going to limit the potential harm. So while I agree that the compulsive gambler, myself included, will find any possible way to go out and gamble if they really want to, I'd say it's the same as the cookie analogy. If I really want a big brownie and a scoop of ice cream, I'm going to go find it. If I absolutely want it, I'm going to find it. Now, if the closest place I can get it is an hour and a half away, I'm going to have to really want it to have to go get it. And by the same token, if it's in my house and I have a year's supply, I'm going to eat it pretty much every day, maybe for breakfast even. So the whole concept or the whole question of will this law or kind of the Supreme Court striking down and making it possible to create laws for sports betting in states, will that increase gambling? The answer is yes, it's going to. So that's one of the big negatives that I see from the expansion of gambling here in the United States. I will say it's been cool, though, on the other side, which is this is an opportunity to educate people, to point out, hey, what about problem gambling? It's really brought problem gambling into the spotlight, which it wasn't before. When we just got off of March, which was Problem Gambling Awareness Month, it would have been even better if you could have had this decision happen in March, which I think a lot of people thought it might have, but they decided not to rule on it at that point. But like I say, it's brought awareness to problem gambling, and that's my number one goal. I can't control the expansion of gambling. That's well beyond my control or anyone else's control. But what I can do is help to educate more and more people about the dangers of problem gambling. And so really my commitment to this goal has not wavered. And that's one of those things, this hasn't changed that. If anything, it's given me more ammunition and more kind of awareness. I mean, I had my tweet read on one of the local Cleveland sports radio shows the other day when they were discussing it. And so it was an opportunity, as the host said, oh, well, I mean, people already have bookies and they're already betting illegally. Well, yeah, but guess what? Most people don't have a bookie. However, most people do have a cell phone. And so if you put gambling on a cell phone, a lot more people are going to gamble because it's legal. One, they're not breaking a law, and it's easy access. You don't have to do some shady thing, find a bookie to place a bet. And so I kind of tweeted that in a couple of tweets, and one of the hosts read it on the air. And so, like I said, it's a great opportunity to bring more awareness to problem gambling and sort of the fallout. And so I think that's one of the most important things right now is as these laws get enforced, to reach out to the lawmakers and say, hey, we know you're going to do this. We know you're going to take the tax revenue. And like I said earlier, I can't really blame you. I don't want to be a hypocrite. We already have alcohol. We already have cigarettes, which I don't smoke, but a lot of people smoke. And would the world be better if we didn't have any cigarettes? I think, yeah. But I understand that some people like them, and that's something they want to do. But the key being that as we expand it, let's also make sure that we're expanding our outreach and our programs on problem gambling, on compulsive gambling, so that we can bring awareness in the same way that DARE does for drugs and alcohol in schools. We need some programs to educate our youth that, hey, gambling does have a dark side. Because everybody looks at it and they're like, oh, look at the upside. You can bet on sports. You can pick if LeBron's going to make the next shot or if Kevin Love's going to make the next shot. And it's so fun and it's entertainment. And you can make money and all the positive things. But we also need to educate our youth and our society as a whole that there's also the fallout. You can also destroy your family. You can also lead to death, like suicide, because I think the stat is 80% of compulsive gamblers consider suicide. So that's something that we need to bring out that knowledge and expand so that as access and availability increases and as the number of people start to gamble and develop gambling addictions and problems, the resources are there to help them when they fall. And so, like I said, that's going to continue to be my goal with this. And yeah, I'm looking forward to kind of getting a little more notoriety for the podcast, get some more listeners, bring some more people in to hear about problem gambling, to hear my story, to hear your story. And that's where we'll get back to doing those in the next few episodes. I'd like to kind of record 5 or 10 interviews so we can just have the next 5 to 10 episodes be interviews, because I think those are more powerful than just listening to me. Like I say, your story is even more important. And the more stories that we get out there, the more validity people have with problem gambling. They're going to understand, okay, hey, that person sounds like my dad. They sound like my cousin. They sound like my brother, my sister. So I've had a bunch of people reach out and say they want to come on the show. If you're listening to this and you want to come on, please reach out. If we can fill up the next 20 or 30 episodes with people's stories, I think that would be awesome. So I guess to just summarize this episode, the ruling, as much as I wish it wasn't going to happen, it's going to. And I always assumed it was going to pass. So it was just a matter of when. And expanded access, we can look to other countries. And look at the UK, look at Australia. I know you folks really, really struggle because you have so much access and availability. And just now, later on, you're starting to figure out the laws. I think the lawmakers are starting to figure out the laws. So hopefully here in the United States, we can be a little bit more proactive on that to get those laws on the books, to get the education out there ahead of time. It's not going to stop people from becoming problem gamblers and becoming addicted. And that's, as I think of why I'm not a hypocrite, although I obviously understand that this is extremely personal and you can view me as being a hypocrite, the damage that compulsive gambling can do is just incredible. And I think all addictions can lead to death one way or another, whether it's an overdose or suicide in the form of the most popular, probably death for us gamblers. But the destruction that gambling can do to families, and again, like I say, all addictions do it to them. But I mean, you can literally wipe out your 401k and all the money that your family has, which impacts your children's ability to go to school and all these other things that some of the other addictions may do to an extent. But I think gambling, the speed at which it can happen, the isolation, the fact that it's not something anybody else can see or detect, allows it to go way, way, way down the road past the problems that some of the other addictions have. So let's continue to share stories. Let's continue to push for education. And let's just continue to educate people because that's really the best way. The best way is to educate one other person on the topic because that's one person that will have a greater awareness about problem gambling. So that wraps up episode 20. I look forward to chatting with you in future episodes, literally chatting with you and sharing your story on future episodes. Thanks again for listening. Give me your feedback and let me know if you want to be on the show. Thanks. This is Jamie, and you are listening to the Gambling Still Sucks podcast. Now, before you go, I'd like to go over a few very important things. First of all, I think it's important to remember that problem gambling is a treatable disorder. There's no scientific evidence or study that suggests that this is just a terminal condition and that we're going to be forced to deal with the negative side effects and results of our actions for the rest of our lives. And so while I know that in the moment it feels like this is something that you're going to be struggling with for the rest of your life, science just doesn't back that up. Recovery is real, but we just need to seek out treatment. And so that brings me to point number 2, which is that help is available. Many of the states here in the United States actually offer free counseling and therapy for not only gamblers, but family members as well. And so you just need to know that these programs are available. And the best way to start finding out more information is to call the hotline number. And that's 1-800-522-4700. Again, that's 1-800-522-4700. And this is the number run by the National Council on Problem Gambling. And so it covers all 50 states, and they're going to have information and be able to start to guide you on the path to seek out help in the area where you live. And these hotlines aren't just available here in the United States. They're available around the world. So just simply open up a web browser, type in gambling help, gambling hotline, and you'll be able to find the information for your local area. In addition to the hotlines, there are numerous places where you can find gambling support and information online. If you go to gamblingstillsucks.com/help, I'll list some of these things and I'll continue to add to this as I find new resources, whether they're chat groups or online forums or just great information. So again, that was gamblingstillsucks.com/help. As a disclaimer, this podcast does not provide legal or medical advice. Look, I'm not a doctor, a therapist, or an attorney. I'm just a guy who had a gambling problem. So while we'll discuss a lot of topics and I'll provide a lot of insight into what's worked for me, please seek out the help of a professional. Go visit a lawyer, a doctor, or a therapist to help you deal with your gambling problem. The information that we discuss is for informational purposes and should not be taken as professional legal or medical advice. And reliance on the information appearing on the podcast is solely at your own risk. The music for this podcast is Something Elated by Broke for Free and licensed under the Creative Commons.